Hello there, welcome back to another show. I'm going to look today at Hell in the Pacific, which is a John Boorman film from the late 60s that was his kind of, it was him learning how to work with a difficult actor. And it's not Lee Marvin who's a difficult actor. Right, so basically, the film was made about in the late 60s. It was after John Boorman had a success with Point Blank, which was a very controversial film in the studio because it was very experimental, but it did well. It came after Lee Marvin had won his Oscar, so he was popular, so he gave Boorman a lot of support and he trusted Boorman. They remained friends until Marvin died. They were a closely knit set of pals there. So they wanted to do something else after Point Blank was such a big hit. I mean, Boorman had already done some work documentaries and things in Britain. He'd already done Catch Us If You Can. But that he was now kind of starting to get an idea of what he wanted to do with his career. He'd really made a film that was not just successful, but important critically. So obviously he wanted to keep going and actually keep making films that was, seen as important. So he thought of this metaphor for the war, or for warfare in general, which was Hell in the Pacific. So it's set during World War II, and basically 2 soldiers are trapped in this remote island. It's well away from the war. One's Japanese, one is American. So Lee Marvin plays the American. The Japanese soldier is played by Toshiro Mifune, the massively successful and revered Kurosawa actor. So at this point, he really made his big films with Kurosawa. So he was viewed as at his peak for commercially and being important to anyone who wanted to use him. But actually, at this point, he'd done his big films. There would be other films, but he was actually going to go in towards TV after this, and he would be less of a force in Japanese cinema after he split with Kurosawa. But at the time, he was viewed as really important. He was getting him was a big ask, and Boorman and Lee Marvin were both big fans of him, and they went over to see him and went out for drinks with him and treated him respectfully. And what they did was, because it was 2 cultures coming together, they brought in one of Kurosawa's screenwriters to help get the side of the Japanese side to make it correct, so they wouldn't do anything insensitive for Mifune. Unfortunately, this Japanese writer actually saw the character in this film as a buffoon, when in actual fact Boorman wanted him to be dignified. I mean, he's the more dignified of the 2. Between him and Marvin, he's the one who figures stuff out quicker, and but he's still a buffoon in other ways. But Boorman did not want to make him a buffoon. He didn't want to make Marvin a buffoon either. It was a case of they have the strengths and have the flaws, and both of them are essentially equal in the pecking order of the film. So both of them have moments where they're really clever and moments where they're really stupid. But this screenwriter, who was used to writing for Mifune, went to the buffoon from Rashomon kind of character rather than the dignified character from Throne of Blood, really. So he went for one thing that Mifune did well, and Boorman wanted the other one, basically. With bits of that one in there, but not the full thing. Because Boorman did not view it as a comedy, it was a drama, it was a horror story of these 2 cultures clashing, and then slowly come together. And then what brings them together and what takes them apart. So it's a simple metaphor, but it was meant to be almost like a silent film. I watched it from a Blu-ray from, I think it's Spain. And so I had the English language, so you could turn the subtitles on and hear what Mifune was saying, but that's not what Boorman wanted. So he wanted basically, if you understood English, you understood Marvin's character, and if you understood Japanese, you would understand Mifune's character and Marvin would be talking nonsense. And it would be a case of, you'd be able to see it would be a way to actually suggest the lack of communication. I've no idea what they would do for Germany or places like that. If they would just subtitle both sides, I don't know. But that was the idea. Because Boorman wanted a sense of you don't understand what one side is saying, just to show the frustration of the other side. So that's how I watched it. So I couldn't tell you what Mifune's character was saying, but I got the idea of what he meant most of the time. And it shows the idea of, you can get the idea from tone, from actions, what someone means. But it shows you the frustration of not being able to speak. You have to point, mime, things like that. So Lee Marvin was definitely on Boorman's side in the sense of he understood what Boorman was after. He'd fought in the war. He'd been injured in the war. Mifune had been in the war as well, but he hadn't been, like, Lee Marvin was in, like, the elements of the war where he'd PTSD after it. He was a sniper. He went over to islands before they attacked to set himself up to snipe at the enemy when the main attack force came in. So, I mean, he was went through some troubling times. Mifune was basically behind the scenes. He wasn't really in the war on the same level as Marvin was. So that was kind of a difference between them. But Mifune understood the war and understood the passions of the war and understood what it meant to his country. But he just wasn't. But he kind of came from a kind of slightly more. He'd come from a family of means, really, so he wasn't going to be one of the grunts. And you can tell in the film, Mifune's character was educated, and Marvin's character is on the street educated. You sense that just from their interactions and just from how they approach things. Like, Mifune's much more book learned and he understands how to fish, how to create something to soak up the water so he can keep himself from dehydrating. Marvin's idea there is to try and steal Mifune's water rather than say, okay, that's a good idea, let's do that elsewhere. You know. And but the whole plot really is these two characters trying to figure out how to coexist during the war, when initially they try to kill each other, and then slowly it becomes a case of sort of mutual disrespect, and then slowly they have to learn to trust each other and comprehend each other and get on and manipulate each other to get what they want. So it's a slow process of them slowly coming together and then deciding they have to get off the island. And the thing is that Mifune's character is the one that's most unbending at the start. Like, Marvin's character bends more at the start, really, and tends to be the softer touch throughout. He's more sensitive to the situation, and he kind of understands when he's being a dick and when he has to compromise. Like, he really is the one who kind of he starts out for blood because that's his job, but eventually he kind of figures things out and he's easier to compromise with than Mifune is, because Mifune, you feel, comes from a set of moral codes that isn't allowed to do that, while Marvin comes from a more street smart thing. Is like, this is the way you have to do things because you have to survive. So he's got less to lose in the sense of pride, but he's also the one who instigates things childishly a lot of the time. So he is more of a big kid, but he's also the one with more sensitivity towards, we need to do this and we need to kind of compromise. And he knows when he has to back down, really. Mifune's character is more straight arrow, and that's why I think John Boorman had problems with Mifune, with a sense of he couldn't have two buffoons on the island. They couldn't both be stupid. One had to be smart, and one had to be bit more of an overgrown kid, and Marvin's already the overgrown kid in the thing. If they'd done it the other way around, it wouldn't have worked as well. Because Lee Marvin has an ability to switch between being a buffoon and being very serious within like that. Well, Mifune is he can switch between them well, but he's not as quick as Marvin is at it. And it's just one of those things. Some actors are better at certain things than others. I mean, Marvin can play wounded pride that's kind of dangerous really well. Mifune is much more of a slow burn actor, and it's very complicated. It's just two different actors. That's why you want to put them together. They're similar in some ways and they're different in other ways. And and Lee Marvin never seemed to have a problem playing the buffoon in the scene. Like there's a scene with him when he's caught Mifune and he's trying to make him his dog and throw him a stick, and he keeps on going to do it and picking up a stick with his own mouth to show him how to do it, and then he gives up and goes, "I'm sick of playing the dog." And there's that kind of thing that you couldn't see Mifune doing, but Marvin is fine doing that. He had enough of a sense of humour about his own absurdity to pull that off. So the beginning of the film is amazing because it's just silent. It's just them trying to fight over this water supply bits. Everything's clear. The geography is clearly defined early, so you know where the water is, you know where the mountains are, you know where the rocks are, where the dangerous bits are, where the people can climb over, where things are defended, where things are not. So it's quietly established early, and then you see variations of how they get around these things, and it's a wonderful first third where it's just establishing threat, showing reaction to threat, establishing further threat and variation of threat as each side gets tactical with the other, and then just watching this situation slowly explode towards violence. Then this middle section is when they realise they have to actually try and work together. It's like they both may die if they don't work together. And it becomes a different thing of them trying to talk to each other when they don't understand, and trying to mime to each other, and trying to learn what the other person's about, or they can't actually talk the same language. So that's another great sequence where you learn people slowly through what they do. Because this section, they capture one another, they get one up in one another, then they realise they have to compromise, then they slowly start to find their own places on the beach as the as Mifune is catching fish, Marvin is doing his thing, and slowly they kind of learn to respect each other's skill set, really. And that's another wonderful sequence because Boorman still is playing it like a silent film. Ultimately, this is a silent film with talking, we don't understand the language half the time, but that's the way it's always presented as a silent film. The way someone looks at someone else is far more important than what's said. So the film becomes a meditation of how you actually survive again with an enemy, and how you start to see each other's humanity, see each other as, and not just the enemy, but the way your country wants you to see each other, because that's how you allow someone to actually kill someone else, because killing someone else is not something, it's something that's been bred out of human nature, and now when you get to war, you have to be bred back into human nature. So it's there in the background of people, but it's not really cultivated to don't do that. Now it's like, do that. So it's them having to go from one to the other, like going from kill each other, we've ingrained hatred, we've been propagandized towards each other, now suddenly, no, they're just a human being. So what do we do? So the final third is some of the best stuff, but also is one of those situations where there was arguments between different parties on how to end the film. So there's an ending on this version that Boorman does not approve of. So I'll explain what happens, then I'll explain what the ending is, because it's made in the 60s. You should have seen it by now. Right, so basically the final third is they decide they need to get off the island. The island's isolated and no one's coming for them. Like Marvin's been waiting, hoping someone would have looked out for him and try to find him. At a certain point it's like they've stopped looking. They think they're dead. And it's like, we have to get off this island. We cannot stay here. We're going to die here if we don't stay. So they get some trees and they build this raft to go on board. They try and stock up as much food as they can. And the first big sequence is them trying to get away from the barrier reef to try and get beyond that, from the waves coming into the island that means boats have to push through that to actually go against the tide. They have to get through that first, which they do, but it's a terrific sequence because John Boorman was filming this stuff on an island that was isolated, and they were doing everything practically. They were, if you're on a raft in the film, you're on a raft. So, they did that in a terrific sequence where you see Mifune and Marvin doing this stuff. And then they go into the open ocean and you see basically the loss of faith in going finding anything. Like, at a certain point a ship goes by and it's an American ship, so Mifune throws away the one thing they have to get the ship to see them, because he's the one to be captured. And it's like this compromise, because whoever side they find, one of them is going to be a prisoner of war. It's like that's a tension that they can't talk about it, but it's there. So they start to lose hope, and then finally they get to another island, which is a bigger island where there's a military base. And initially they think it's a Japanese base, and then it turns out it was an American base. The Americans overtook the Japanese base and destroyed it, then they overtook it, and then now they've gone as well. So there's parts of the Japanese culture and parts of American culture there. But once they get to that and start to shave and get into their uniforms or finding old uniforms and getting into that, they start to revert to type of Marvin's American, and he knows from reading the Things of Life magazine, he knows from that Japanese losing the war. They're going to lose the war, and that's it. There's no way around it. And he feels sorry for the guy because he starts to like the guy, but it's like, they're going to lose the war. And Mifune is finding things. He's trying to remain friendly with Marvin because they've been through quite a thing together. But as soon as they start drinking and have their uniforms on again, old resentments surface up. Like Mifune sees that his side's losing the war, and Marvin is getting drunk and asks him, does he believe in God? And it's a sign of, like, one of the good things here is Marvin's been kind of more sympathetic, really, in some ways. Probably because I've been watching it with his dialogue scene and Mifune's not seen, to understand where he's coming from, and just by the way he looks at certain times, he has been, like, very... Like he's given up the ground more than Mifune has during the film to try and get ahead and try and get somewhere. Just a teensy bit, but he's the one that can make peace first. He's the one that compromises first, and then at the end, he's the one that causes the havoc by being a dick. So it just shows you there's layers of understanding, layers of dickishness between both of them. So it evens it out so that neither one has the moral authority in the end of the film. And now Boorman just wanted them to separate at that point, just walk away and go their own separate ways, because they're now back in civilization. They can no longer really not fight each other. So they go their separate ways to avoid fighting. And that was released in America, and the film didn't do very well. So in Britain, they had a changed ending where they had an explode. They blew up the building where they were in to see they both get killed, which Boorman didn't like, because Boorman said even though he felt that his ending was a bit compromised, it wasn't like dramatic in a way that he'd hoped for. This was just nihilistic and didn't really say anything. It was just an ending, just a shock ending, which it is. It comes out of nowhere and you're like, what? Like, I'd much rather just see them separate. I mean, it's not the greatest ending to a terrific film, but it would be acceptable. So that's what happened basically, is in the American version they separate, and European versions they blown up. So just take whatever you want, but the director prefers them just separating. And that's the version I prefer really as well, just the idea of them separating seems a better ending. Because that's what it seems to be building towards. I mean, Boorman said like it was one of those things where he had no ending. It's like they got everything right until the ending, and they asked Kurosawa, and Kurosawa didn't have a clue either. And there was no way to resolve this. It was either kill each other or separate. Instead, I added somebody to get killed by the hand of God, really, and that's not satisfying. Because it takes everything out of their hands. But it's still an amazing film. This is a beautiful film. Even though the end's a bit compromised, this is still just wonderful. The acting's terrific, even though Boorman had a hell of a time with Mifune, having to go through every scene with him to try and make sure the scenes were there. And it's funny because this is the film of Mifune's films that he did overseas, away from Japan. This is the one that's much better received than the other ones. And there was a one where Mifune was difficult as hell. And it led to Kurosawa told Boorman later, as you don't direct Mifune, you point in the proper direction and just let him go like a tornado. And I think the problem was he thought he was playing one thing and Boorman was like, no, you're playing this other thing, and he was accepting it. Because there was a suggestion that the script writer from Japan showed him his script was rejected, and that's what he was playing. So that was a problem with the film. But the film is so beautiful, and Conrad Hall was the cinematographer, and Jordan Cronenworth was his camera operator. So you had two geniuses behind the camera, and in an isolated location with only two actors. They had a ball. You could see just the shot composition was always wonderful. Like Boorman says, when he'd set a shot up, and then when he was looking away, Conrad Hall would move it a little bit just to give it his own little touch. But the setups were wonderful. Where the camera was, the placement for the dramatic effect was always in the right place. It's just like a really good film. A terrific film. It's an great example of how you make a film with two people and make it interesting. It's like you work with the actors, you plan it out like what the beats are, and then you add nuance with the actors and the cinematographer. And because that's what that film is, it's just like slowly building up trust and building up details that add up and pay off. So this is just a wonderful film. So I can not recommend it any higher than I possibly can. You can get it on Blu-ray and from Amazon in Europe. It's easy to get, so that's how you do it. So I hope this inspires you to go watch it, because it is wonderful. So that's me for now. I hope you enjoyed this video. Bye.